Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Monday, July 14th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. In a new memoir, an author shares what it's like to be a wildland firefighter.
Part of my intention was kind of to share this job with the world because my impression, at least when I was working the job, was that most people didn't understand what wildland firefighters really do.
And even fewer understand what it's like to be a woman doing this job. We will hear more from author Kelly Ramsey in just a moment.
Times like these make one thing clear. Public radio has never been more valuable. It's also never been more vulnerable. We need the trusted, reliable reporting of KVPR for moments like this one. But with federal funding for public broadcasting on the brink, stations like KVPR face the possibility of a looming shortfall and cuts to programs and local coverage. We're not going anywhere, but your support has never been more important. Start your monthly gift at kvpr.org/donate.
And now to our feature story. In the world of wildland firefighting, there is one elite crew known to tackle some of the most dangerous situations. They are called Hotshot Crews. These firefighters undergo rigorous training, venturing to face the most threatening fires, often in remote areas. The physical demands are intense, and training includes proving you can meet the standards set for running, sit-ups, push-ups, and more. Considering this, I bet if you imagined a crew working together to contain a raging wildfire, you probably pictured a bunch of strong men, right? So what if I told you a woman with a degree in poetry was part of that unit? Today, we're speaking with Kelly Ramsey. She was the only woman on a hotshot crew in Northern California, where women are so rare. She tells us she had to wear men's clothing for that classic yellow and green Forest Service uniform. But before the Forest Service, Kelly earned her MFA in writing, and she brought these passions together in her recently released memoir, Wildfire Days, a woman, a hotshot crew, and the burning American West. In it, Kelly details proving herself and finding her place in the male-dominated field of firefighting, but also the personal journey that took her to the remote forests of Northern California. Kelly starts our conversation by describing what lit the spark, so to speak, for her to pursue firefighting.
I was just really intrigued by both the job and the way that my friends who were doing it described it. And also, I was intrigued by fire itself. So I had seen a little bit of wildfire on the Klamath and obviously the smoke from fires, and learned a bit about how fire is managed and prevented. And I had done some prescribed burning. And I was just like, I think this phenomenon of fire, like fire itself, is really interesting, and how we manage it and how we take fire weather. Anyway, everything about it fascinated me. So to me, it seemed worth kind of pushing through, maybe the gender barriers and the physical challenges of the job in order to figure out if I could learn more about it and how I would fit there.
I will circle back to your sort of fascination with fire because I think it comes through in your book, sort of metaphorically as well. But you mentioned the physical part of the job. What were you physically wearing? And I'm curious, women or people with a smaller frame, are there like accommodations for you? Or is it sort of like the military where this is what you have to wear and do to have this job?
Yeah. So you're physically wearing, a lot of people picture a firefighter in like the heavy flak jacket and that like really heavy sort of like barrier clothing. We don't really wear that. We wear what essentially looks like a shirt and pants, and it's a material called Nomex, which is fire resistant, but it's, it's like, it feels like cloth. Like the pants are actually super comfy. So you're wearing this like yellow shirt and these green pants and then fire boots. You're carrying a pack that weighs at least 45 pounds, usually a tool, and then sometimes fuel or water or a chainsaw, something else that weighs an extra 15 to 25 pounds. So a lot of weight. And for women, it's gotten better. It used to just be like, yeah, wear what everybody else is wearing. And my first pack was like a size medium, which is a man's medium, which was huge
Ah.
on my body. They have started to make extra small packs and female specific packs, which is really great. And there was like a campaign by a female firefighter some years ago to make the clothing actually like to have there be female sizes. So sometimes you can find like a women's Nomex shirt, but they're still a little bit rare and hard to locate. So a lot of times you're just wearing the smallest version of the man's thing that you can find.
Now, I believe you were the only woman on your hotshot crew. So how common is it for there to be female wildland firefighters?
So, some people have said there's about 15% women in wildland fire in general. I would say that when you get to these more elite and competitive crews like hotshot crews, rappellers, smoke jumpers, it seems more like 5% female. I mean, like my crew, I was the only woman in my first year, one of two my second year, and most other hotshot crews I would see in Northern California, there'd be somewhere between 0 and 2 women. So pretty common to be in the extreme minority.
I want to talk about the Hotshot Crew because you have a book that recently came out titled Wildfire Days, A Woman, a Hotshot Crew, and the Burning American West. So what exactly is a Hotshot Crew and how is that different from other crews and how did you become a part of one?
So yeah, hotshot crews are these elite units. They are basically, they go to the most difficult, grueling, or remote parts of a wildfire and sometimes tackle assignments that are a little more dangerous or a little more technical than other crews do. And to do so, we train at a high level. So you have to meet a bunch of standards physically in terms of how fast you can run and hike, weight training, sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups and those standards are really prescribed. But then you also have to do a lot of training in terms of how you construct fire line and how you do a burnout operation or a backfire operation where we burn intentionally in advance of the oncoming fire. So yeah, it's a combination of physical and mental training to be prepared to tackle these tough assignments.
And probably understanding how fire moves.
Yes, exactly. Understanding fire behavior and how to sort of anticipate its behavior and act accordingly is a huge part of it.
Your book gives really good insight into what it's actually like in this day-to-day as a wildland firefighter. Was that part of your goal or intention? Because it's also a memoir, so it's very personal, but we also get a good look at what it's like being on this crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my intention was kind of to share this job with the world because my impression, at least when I was working the job, was that most people didn't understand what wildland firefighters really do, and especially didn't understand what people on a hotshot crew were doing, or even what a hotshot crew was. So I was like, I want to write this book and I want to help people really understand what is happening out there. In addition to, of course, yeah, telling my own story and a lot of my own backstory, as any memoir does.
I would imagine trust and morale is really important if you're working on a team that's in these sort of conditions where you're battling a fire. How did you navigate that? Did that take time, being the only woman on this crew? Was there any difficulty there?
Yeah, it took some time. Initially they hadn't had a woman in about 10 years, so there was this sense of like discomfort or awkwardness of like how do we act around her? Is she going to be cool? Do we have to like not tell certain kinds of jokes? And yeah, it took a while for me to be like, okay, a lot of your jokes are totally fine.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm okay with some crass humor. But some of your jokes, if they're sexist, are not totally fine. So, kind of like finding those lines and those boundaries, and then also just building relationships. And at the same time, proving myself physically on the job. I think as that happens over the course of a couple months, I started to feel like, okay, they're treating me like I am, an equal, I'm respected. They weren't like cruel to me or exclusive at first. I know people who have had those experiences though as women on hotshot crews. So I got lucky, I think.
Wow. And arguably, for anyone from any gender, it would take time to build trust and companionship in those circumstances, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any rookie, you're sort of like in this category of you're a rookie. We're not totally sure about you. You need to really prove yourself and earn your place here. For most of your first season, it's like that, regardless of your gender.
Totally. Now, as I mentioned, the book is a memoir and is quite personal at times. I really liked how you used fire in a lot of different ways, and I'd love to read a small excerpt that stood out to me. You write, "You could say two nice things about my parents' marriage. They were in love once, at least for a while, and they chose to have a child. Beyond that, disaster, engine failure, goat rodeo, and my favorite, dumpster fire. My parents together were kerosene and a match." What made you want to tell this story of working with fire, not just about the job, but in this sort of personal way? I mean, your MFA really comes through in this book, I must say. And your
I don't know if that's a good thing.
It is, and your poetry writing, it's so thoughtful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't really set out with this intention of like, oh, I'm going to tell my entire life story and the story of my whole family in addition to talking about fire. But those stories were really in me. I had started another memoir before that was kind of about my dad and our relationship, and felt this like urgency around writing about fire and a similar urgency around writing about my family. And at some point, they began to merge. And I think I drew this real parallel, and I draw it in the book, between how you decide what battles to fight regarding your family of origin and when it's time to let go. And then the same thing applies to something like fighting fire. How do you decide where to fight, where to keep going, how to remain in a profession like firefighting, and how do you decide when it's time to step away or let something go? So yeah, to me, they kind of started to speak to each other.
Yes.
Those parts of my life and those stories. And then it was a matter of, of course, like arranging the book so that those stories play off each other in the right way on the page.
And before I let you go, Kelly, I'm curious, what do you wish people would take away from your book?
Oh, yeah. So, sort of two things. I hope that people will take away a greater understanding of fire in the West or in this country in general and how fires are fought. And I hope that people will sort of take that knowledge and maybe advocate for more prevention work or help to advocate for federal wildland firefighters who are still underpaid. So there's that side of it. But I also, as you said, this book is about so much more than just fire. And I think I've had a lot of conversations where people are like, it's a book about fire and a firefighter. And I'm like, this is a book about family and being human. And so I hope people will take away that experience that I think so many of us share of going out into the world, sometimes into the backcountry or the woods, but sometimes just going out into life. And you're looking for yourself, trying to find healing from your childhood, trying to figure out where you belong. And I think so many of us are on that search and feel that way. And I hope that people will see themselves in this book or feel seen.
Kelly Ramsey, author of Wildfire Days, A Woman, a Hotshot Crew, and the Burning American West. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden, Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado, and KVPR, with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.